strongly think that we should do is to create such a huge pressure on Gaza that Gaza will become an area where people cannot live. People cannot live until Hamas is destroyed, which means that Israel not only stop to supply energy, diesel, water, food, whatever, as we did in the past 20 years. Maybe we were stupid or naive or good enough to do it, but we should prevent any other possible assistance by others and to create in Gaza such a terrible, unbearable situation that can last weeks and months. It is going to be a very, very long siege until all the water, the food, the energy of Hamas that stored it will run out.
Okay.
And there will be no way that they will be able to live there.
Let's talk now a little bit more about the potential invasion of Gaza. The political parties have put aside their differences and created an emergency coalition. Reserves have been called up and hundreds of thousands of troops are now near the border. Power and water have been cut off and airstrikes have been launched to soften defences and force civilians to flee. Let's talk more about how this invasion might go ahead. Major General Giora Eiland is former head of planning at the Israeli Defence Force, and we can speak to him now. Good morning to you.
Right, good morning.
I wouldn't expect you to give anything away, but some people might be wondering, some people who very much support the idea of a ground invasion of Gaza might be wondering why this hasn't happened already. Is this complicated by these hostages who are being held in Gaza?
I guess that this is one of the considerations, but not the major one. And let me explain the big picture, and it is important that our views will be well understood. After this terrible event that began on Saturday, when about 1,200 Israelis, most of them are civilians, most of them are elderly people, women, children, babies, were slaughtered in the most brutal way, it is clear that Israel is in no less than existential war. And it is not only a matter of tactical ability to destroy this facility of Hamas or other. It is in regard to the question whether people in Israel will be able to live after this war. And if the government of Israel believes that the people who used to live in the 22 villages and towns around Gaza will decide to return to their area, not to their homes, because their homes are completely destroyed, but to rebuild this area and to decide to grow children there, they will have to guarantee that no possible threat might emerge from Gaza. So it will not be a matter of whether or not we will be able to deter someone. It is the question whether or not someone will be there. Now, in order to achieve such a very ambitious goal, which is to make sure that there is no possible terrorist threat from Gaza forever, we will have not only to destroy the abilities of Hamas today, but to make sure that this organization does not exist there. Now, how can we achieve such a very ambitious goal? One way is to carry out a massive ground operation, which has a lot of complications, and of course it has long or far-reaching consequences, especially because all Gaza is actually one battlefield full with booby traps, mines, obstacles, weapons, thousands of kilometers of tunnels in which 20,000 Hamas fighters are waiting for such an operation. And I'm not sure that this is the preferred way, not to mention that we might face another front in the north at the very same time.
So what are the other options then?
The other option, and that's what I strongly think that we should do, is to create such a huge pressure on Gaza that Gaza will become an area where people cannot live. People cannot live until Hamas is destroyed, which means that Israel not only stop to supply energy, diesel, water, food, whatever, as we did in the past 20 years. Maybe we were stupid or naive or good enough to do it, but we should prevent any other possible assistance by others. And to create in Gaza such a terrible, unbearable situation that can last weeks and months. It is going to be a very, very long siege until all the water, the food, the energy of Hamas that stored it will run out,
Okay.
and there will be no way that they will be
Okay.
able to live there.
Okay.
Now, in order to do it, please let me continue. In order to do it, we should today call, number one, all the people of Gaza to leave Gaza, or at least to move to the coast of Gaza, because every building in Gaza, including UNRWA schools or hospitals or others, are legitimate military targets, because that's exactly where Hamas fighters are. Number two, any movement of any vehicle in Gaza should be forbidden. Number three, I just heard the Secretary General of the UN call for humanitarian assistance, and I was amazed. Don't you think that the first thing that he should demand, that Hamas would allow the International Red Cross to visit Gaza and to visit the 200 Israeli hostages? Most of them are children and women.
Yes. Okay.
Before we can speak about any humanitarian assistance.
Okay, Major General, I mean, I've allowed you to speak for a long time, and everything that you said has been very interesting. But what I will say here is that there are many people who've said that basically starving the Palestinians in Gaza into submission is a war crime. And secondly, and I'll allow you to answer in a second, that the Palestinians are not necessarily Hamas. Some of them support them, some of them have voted for them in the past, but we are talking about two distinct groups of people, aren't we? And I understand your shock, your disgust at what has happened, but to starve 2.3 million people, objectively, that's wrong, isn't it?
I have to correct you. Number one, what happened in Gaza is very similar to what happened exactly 90 years ago in Germany. Hamas was elected in a democratic election. It was the only time in the history of the Arab world that there was a democratic election, and they got the support of most of the people in Gaza, who continue to support them. And Hamas is not, in this regard, is not Al-Qaeda. It is not some group of militants that came from nowhere. It is the very authentic representative of the people of Gaza. Now, under certain circumstances, if you want to achieve a decisive victory and you have no other choice, the British forces bombed all the cities of Germany during that war in a very explicit intent to kill as many civilians in Gaza, in Germany. We do not intend to do it. We don't bomb civilians just in order to kill them. But we have to create a situation that Hamas cannot function. Now, anyone that tells us that what I suggest is not relevant or not proportional, number one, has to give me a better advice. How can I achieve the elementary need to secure the ability of the people of Israel to live inside Israel wherever they are?
Okay.
And there is probably, let me finish. Probably there is no other way.
Okay.
Number two, the word proportional has to be understood. Proportional does not mean that you can use more or less massive force. Proportional is based on one matter, whether the goal itself justifies certain actions. And the goal is to make sure that the state of Israel can survive.
Okay.
Let me say another thing. The most well-known Israeli poem was written about 100 years ago by the first Israeli poet, who wrote about terrible pogrom that took place in Kishinev in Moldova, where hundreds of Jews were murdered in this city. And as children, this is the first thing that we learn in school. And the whole idea of the existence of the state of Israel is to guarantee that something similar to that could not happen.
Okay.
And after it did happen a few days ago, we must guarantee that it will not happen again.
Okay, Major
And it
General,
is
Major
in
General,
a matter,
you've
it is
okay.
either we or
have
them.
you. No, no.
And
Listen, you've made that point several times. It's a very valid one. The only reason I'm cutting this interview short is because we've been speaking to you for a very good length of time, for about 10 minutes now, and we do have other people that we need to speak to. But thank you very much for your time. That's Major General Giora Eiland, former head of planning at the Israeli Defence Force.